In this video, I am going to share with you a step-by-step pattern of making this crochet Easter bear. So let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to DIY Crafts. For this, I am using a 4-ply cotton yarn along with a crochet hook of size 3 mm. Now let's begin with an orange shade, and now we are going to make the hands for this bear. So begin with chain 1 and make 4 single crochet stitches into the center. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now close the magic ring. Now let's start making the second row. So for this, insert the needle onto the top of the first stitch, and into this first stitch make 2 single crochet stitches, that is single crochet increase. So that's first single stitch, and then make 1 more single stitch into the same stitch. Now put the stitch marker on the top of the first stitch to mark the beginning of the second row. Now continue to make single crochet increases throughout the row. So in the first row we have 4 single stitches, which means in the second row we have to make 4 single crochet increases. So by the end of the second row you will have 8 single crochet stitches. Now here I am making the last single crochet increase for the second row. So that's the first single stitch and then the second single stitch. This completes the second row. Now remove the stitch marker and into the next stitch make a slip stitch. Now chain 1 and fasten off. You can trim the excess thread by leaving a long tail end, which you are going to use this to attach it to the main body. If not, hide the tail ends and you can use a glue to attach it. So either ways it's your comfort. Now give it a shape, and the thread which is left after completing the magic ring is inserted into the hand as a stuffing. Now make 1 more piece like this and put both of them aside. Now with the same orange shade, let's start making ears for the bear. So begin with the magic ring and then make chain 1. Now into the center make 6 single crochet stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now close the magic ring, and then for the second row begin with 1 single stitch. Now put the stitch marker to mark the beginning of the second row into this stitch, and then into the next stitch make 1 increase. That's 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Now repeat this 3 more times. So make 1 single stitch and followed by 1 increase into the next stitch. Again 1 single stitch in the next stitch and 1 increase in the next stitch. So this completes the second row. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the third row. Begin with 1 single stitch. Put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the third row. Now continue to make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row for row 3 and row 4 as well. So we'll have 9 stitches in row 3 and row 4. So once 4th row is also completed, remove the stitch marker, then make a slip stitch into the next stitch. You don't have to put any stuffing into this part. Just make chain 1 and trim the excess thread by leaving a long tail end, and again this tail end is used to attach these ears to the body part, and again poke this starting tail end into the ear. Now make another such piece for both the ears and then put them aside. Now let's start making the muzzle of the bear with the white color yarn. Begin with a magic ring and then make 6 single crochet stitches into the center. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then 6. Now close the magic ring. Then we'll start the second row. So for second row make 2 single crochet stitches in each and every stitch. So which means we have to make single crochet increases 6 times in the second row. So after making the first increase, put the stitch marker on the top of the first stitch to mark the beginning of second row. And now continue to make single crochet increases in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So we will have a total of 6 increases, which means by the end of the second row you will have 12 single crochet stitches. So here making the last increase. So this completes the second row. Now remove the stitch marker and make a slip stitch into the next stitch, and then chain 1 and trim the excess thread, again leaving a little long tail end. Now poke it in the middle to give the shape of the muzzle as shown in the video. So this is how it looks like. Now put this muzzle aside, and then let's start making the bow. For this I am using yellow color yarn. Begin with a slip knot, make chain 3, that's 1, 2 and 3. Now we are going to work the complete project into the first chain. So skip the 2 chains from the hook, and into the first chain make 2 half double crochet stitches. So that's first half double stitch, and then this one is the second half double stitch. Now make chain 2 and make a slip stitch into the same stitch. So this gives the first side of the bow. Now for the second side, again begin with chain 2 and make 2 half double crochet stitches into the same stitch, the same center like the same first stitch, and then make 1 more half double stitch into the same stitch. Now make chain 2 and slip stitch into the center. So this completes the second side of the bow. Now let's give the detailing to this. Make chain 1 and trim the excess thread by leaving a long tail end and fasten off. Now bring the threads at the center closer to each other and wrap it around the center to give the shape of a bow and secure it with a knot. Now this completes the bow. Put this aside and let's start making the cap for our bear. Begin with this blue color yarn. Begin with a magic ring, and then for the first row make 6 single crochet stitches into the center. So that's the third one, 4, 5 and 6. Now close the magic ring, and for row 2 and row 3 make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch. So begin with 1 single stitch, put the stitch marker to mark the beginning of the second row, and then continue to make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch. So as we have 6 single crochet stitches in row 1, we will have 6 stitches in row 2 and row 3 as well. Now after completing the 3 rows, remove the stitch marker, and then we will start making the 4th row. So for this, remove the stitch marker, and now into the next stitch put the needle into the front loop of the next stitch and make 1 single crochet stitch into that stitch. So we have 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch and only into the front loop. Now continue to make 1 single crochet increase in each and every stitch throughout the row. So by the end of this row you will have 12 single crochet stitches. All stitches worked only in the front loops, leaving the back loops. Now make a slip stitch onto the top of the first stitch. Then make chain 1 and fasten off by leaving a long tail end. Again put the starting tail end into the cap as a stuffing. No need to trim off these edges. Just poke the tail end into the stuffing. If you wish, you can hide the second tail end as well and use a glue to attach all these parts to the main body. If you want, you can use a tapestry needle to attach them. So this completes the cute cap. Now put this aside and let's start working the body of the bear. So begin with an orange color and with a magic ring. Make chain 1 and let's start making the first row. We'll have 8 single crochet stitches into the center. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Now close the magic ring and then let's start making the second row. Make sure you close the magic ring tightly so that the hole will be closed completely. Now for the second row, insert the needle onto the top of the first stitch and make increases. So 2 single crochet stitches into the first stitch, then put the stitch marker onto the top of the first stitch to mark the beginning of second row. Now continue to make single crochet increases in each and every stitch throughout the row, which means we will have a total of 8 increases in the second row. So total will be 16 single crochet stitches. Here I am making the last increase of the second row. Once this row is completed, it will be nice and flat. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the third row. So for this, begin with 1 single stitch, then put the stitch marker into that stitch to mark the beginning of third row, and now into the next stitch make a single crochet increase. So we have 1 stitch and then 1 increase, and now repeat this pattern throughout the row. So 1 stitch followed by 1 increase, and overall we have to repeat this total for 8 times. And here I am making the last increase of the third row, and by the end of this row you will have 24 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the fourth row. So for this, make 1 single crochet stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of fourth row. And for the fourth row, we are going to make only 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row. We are not making any increases and decreases, so the count will be the same, 24 in your fourth row. So once the fourth row is completed, remove the stitch marker and let's start making the fifth row. So for this, begin with 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back. Here the pattern will be 5 single stitches, so that's the second one, third, this is the fourth one, and then the fifth. After 5 single crochet stitches, into the next stitch make an increase. That is 2 single stitches into the same stitch. Now repeat this pattern of 5 single stitches and increase throughout the row. So here I am making the last increase of the fifth row, and by the end of the fifth row you will have 28 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the sixth row. Begin with 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back, and then continue to make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So in row 6 also you will have 28 single crochet stitches. Once the sixth row is completed, remove the stitch marker, make 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the 7th row. Now make 2 more single crochet stitches. So total we will have 3 single crochet stitches. That's 1, 2 and 3, and now into the next stitch make an increase. Now make 3 more single crochet stitches. That's 1, 2 and 3. So this is the pattern you have to repeat. So 3 single stitches, increase, and 3 single stitches, and repeat it for 4 times. So begin with 3 single stitches. Now make an increase, that's 2 single stitches into the same stitch, and then make 3 more single stitches. Again make 3 single stitches, increase, and 3 single crochet stitches. So that's the pattern you have to repeat throughout the row. Once the row is completed, you will have 32 single stitches. Now remove the stitch marker, make 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the 8th row, and then continue to make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch. So by the end of the 8th row also you will have 32 single crochet stitches. Once the 8th row is completed, remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 9th row. For this, make 1 single stitch, put the stitch marker back, Then continue to make 6 more single stitches, which means we'll have a total of 7 stitches. So that's 4, 5, 6 and 7. So you can give it a count, and then into the next stitch make an increase. Now repeat this pattern throughout the row for 3 more times until you reach the starting point, and this completes your 9th row with 36 single crochet stitches. Once the 9th row is completed, remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 10th row. Begin with 1 single stitch, put the stitch marker to mark the beginning of the 10th row, and then make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So the 10th row will also have 36 single crochet stitches. Now for the 11th row, remove the stitch marker and let's continue with the pattern. You can see the shape will resemble the Easter egg. So that is the main thing which we are planning to achieve by the end of this project. So for the 11th row, make 1 single stitch and then continue to make 3 more single stitches, so which will make a total of 4 single stitches, and then into the next stitch make 1 increase. Again for the next 4 stitches make single stitches in next 4 stitches. So that's 3 and 4, and now we are going to repeat this pattern of 4 stitches increase and 4 stitches throughout the row. So 4 stitches, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll have an increase. Again make 4 single stitches. So this is how you have to repeat it. Just don't get confused. We have 4 stitches, then increase, and then 4 stitches, and here I am making the last 4 stitches of the 11th row. So by the end of the 11th row you will have 40 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker, make 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back. Now continue to make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So by the end of the 12th row also you will have 40 single crochet stitches. This completes the top part of the bear. Here is where you have to change the color, and as you can see the shape of an egg. Now remove the stitch marker and change the color to blue, the same color which we have used to make the cap. So insert the needle into the stitch, make a slip stitch with a new color, pull the old color from the back side, make chain 1, and then into the same stitch make 1 single stitch. Now let's start making the 13th row. So put a stitch marker into this new stitch. You can leave the tail ends back side, you don't have to carry them. Now continue to make 8 more single stitches, which means we'll have a total of 9 single stitches. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So you can just check the count 1, 2, 3 and up to 9. And now into the next stitch we'll have an increase, and then repeat this pattern for 4 more times throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So this completes the 13th row with 44 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and continue to make the 14th row. For this, make 1 single stitch on the top of the first stitch. The difference here which you can see because of the color change can be adjusted by attaching the hands at this part to hide this out. So I will show that how to do by the end of the project. So mark the beginning of the first stitch of the 14th row and then continue to make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So by the end of the 14th row you will have 44 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker, make 1 single stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of 15th row. So cut and trim the excess thread from the previous yarns. You can just secure them by making a knot, and then you can leave them inside for the stuffing. You don't have to weave in or hide the tail ends. You can just leave them at the back side. So for the 15th row we already have made one single crochet stitch. Now make 4 more single crochet stitches, which will make a total of 5 single stitches. So that's 2, 3, 4 and 5. Once 5 single stitches are done, make an increase in the next stitch. Now make 5 more single stitches. So this is all a complete set. 5 single stitches, increase, and 5 single stitches, and we are going to repeat this full set 4 more times. So again you have to begin with 5 single stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you have to make an increase and again make 5 more single stitches, and likewise repeat it until you reach the starting point. Here I am making the last few stitches of 15th row, and you will have 48 single stitches. See the shape of the bear, Easter bear. I am calling it as an Easter bear. It's nice, right? Make one single stitch and put the stitch marker back, and this is the beginning of row 16. Make one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. And likewise for row 17 until row 21, make one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch. So you'll have 48 count for all these rows, and the shape is now clearly evident, right? Now let's continue for decreasing. Now for the row 22, begin with one single stitch and put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of 22 row. Now make 4 more single stitches, which makes the total of 5. So that's 3, 4 and 5. Now we are going to combine the next 2 stitches using an invisible decrease. So insert the needle into the front loops of the next 2 stitches, drop a loop and make a single stitch, and that's the invisible decrease. Now make 5 more single stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this pattern we are going to repeat 3 more times. So begin with 5 single stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now into the next stitch make one invisible decrease. That's an invisible decrease, and again make 5 more single stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and repeat it 2 more times until you reach the starting point. And this completes the 22nd row with 44 single crochet stitches. Just put a count on your stitches so that your pattern and shape will not deviate from the pattern. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 23. Begin with one single stitch and put the stitch marker back in place. Now make 8 more single stitches, which gives a total of 9. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Now make an invisible decrease into the next 2 stitches. Join both of them using a single crochet invisible decrease. Now repeat this pattern of 9 single stitches and decrease throughout the row until you reach the starting point. And this completes the 23rd row with 40 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 24. So for this, make one single stitch, put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of 24th row. Now make 3 more single stitches. So that's 2, 3 and 4. We'll have 4 single stitches and then make one invisible decrease. Now make again 4 single stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now this set will be repeated. 4 single stitch decrease and 4 single stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. And this completes 24th row with 36 single crochet stitches. And here the shape of egg is getting closer and you can see how the shape is turning out. Remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 25. Make one single stitch, put the stitch marker back, and now make 3 more single stitches for a total of 4. So that's 3 and then 4. Now into the next stitch, make one invisible decrease. So we have 4 single stitches and then decrease, and now we are going to repeat this pattern for 6 times. Here we have changed the pattern. So 4 single stitches and then decrease. Again 4 single stitches and then decrease. And also continue this pattern throughout the row, and by the end of the 25th row you will have 30 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 26. Make one single stitch, put the stitch marker into the stitch to mark the beginning of 26th row. Make 3 single crochet stitches. So already we have done 1, that's 2, and then this is 3. Now make one invisible decrease, and then repeat this pattern of 3 single stitches and decrease throughout the row. So that's 1, 2 and 3, and then we have a decrease. Now repeat this throughout the row, and by the end of the 26th row you will have 24 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making row 27. So for this, begin with one single stitch, put the stitch marker back to mark the beginning of the row 27, and now into the next stitch make one more single stitch. So we have 2 single stitches and then make one invisible decrease, and repeat this pattern throughout the row. So that's one single stitch and then the second single stitch, again one invisible decrease, and now continue to make this pattern throughout the row, and by the end of this row you will have 18 single crochet stitches. You can put the stuffing here, or you can do one more row and then you can add the stuffing. Either ways it's no issues. So for the next row, begin with one single stitch, put the stitch marker, and into the next stitch make one invisible decrease. Again one single stitch and then one invisible decrease, and repeat this pattern throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So by the end of the row 28 you will have 12 single crochet stitches. Here I am making the last invisible decrease for row 28. Now stop your work here and let's add stuffing into the bear. Take a good amount of fiber fill and stuff it into the project. It should be in such a way that it holds a good shape. And once the stuffing is done, now let's assemble the project. Take all the eyes, ears, cap, hands and everything, the bow, whatever we have stitched and kept aside, and using this pearl head pins. So this is how I am going to hide the color change at the part. So hands will be attached in between row 13 and 14 with 14 stitches apart, and ears in between row 3 and row 5 on either side of the head, and you can check the alignment along with the hands. Now the cap will go in between row 1 and 5, that is in between the ears, and then muzzle in between row 7 and row 9 at the front of the face. You can highlight by adding a nose over this muzzle. Now put the bow at the row 13 underneath the muzzle to give the bow near the collar kind of illustration, and place the eyes in between row 6 and row 7 with 6 stitches apart. Once all the parts are assembled, let's continue with the pattern. We are going to now make the last row for the pattern. That's row 29. Begin with one invisible decrease. Put the stitch marker into this stitch, and this marks the beginning of row 29. Now continue to make one single crochet decrease for all the stitches. So for the last row we'll have total 6 invisible decreases. That's 2, and this one is the third invisible decrease. Once the stuffing is done, it will be a little difficult to complete the last row, but just it takes a few seconds to practice and then you're good to go. This is the last invisible decrease of the last row. Now remove the stitch marker and make one slip stitch into the next stitch. Now chain 1, cut the tail end by leaving a long tail end and fasten off. Now using a tapestry needle, take the tail end into the tapestry needle and pass the yarn through the front loops of all the 6 stitches of the last row and pull the tail end gently to close the ring, the opening. Now make a knot to secure the opening and then hide the tail end into the project. Now trim the excess thread and that's it. Your cute amigurumi Easter teddy bear project is now ready. Decorate your home for this Easter or simply put it in your car. Either ways, the choice is yours. Please check the description for the return pattern for this teddy bear. I hope you all enjoyed watching this tutorial. Do give this pattern a try and let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. See you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, share it and subscribe to DIY Crafts.